Good evening and a warm welcome to all the viewers on Cancer Talk with Dr. Manish Jain. We are live on Zoom, Facebook, as well as on YouTube, wherein viewers can ask their questions in the comment box and the Q&A box. So, in today's series of Cancer Talk, we are going to discuss about the evolution in cancer treatment. We will try to understand how cancer treatment has changed along, what are the key factors, how it has benefited us, and what would be the future of treatment. And to guide us through all this, we have with us respected Dr. Manish Jain, Director Medical Oncology at Ruby Hall Clinic, Pune. Welcome, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Dr. Manish Jain is also associated with KEM Hospital, Pune Hospital and Research Center, Jahangir Hospital and Medical Center, and also Noble Hospital. Moreover, he has numerous publications in national and international journals and has received many prestigious awards and recognitions as well for his contribution towards oncology. Also, for patients' benefit, if you have any questions related to cancer, you can visit sir's own YouTube channel named Cancer Talk with Dr. Manish Jain. And also you can visit his second channel on Spotify with the name Cancer Ki Baat Dr. Manish Jain Ke Saath. So please do visit and learn more about cancer. So today, sir would be enlightening us with the new insight on progress in cancer treatment. So without any delay, let's get started. So my first question to you, what exactly can we comprehend from term evolution in cancer treatment?
Basically, cancer treatment has been going on for ages. In fact, it has started from Greek and Egyptian civilization. And in those days, earlier, only surgery was the treatment. There was nothing more than that. People used to operate and sometimes used to burn the tumor. And that was the only effective way. And most of the patients, because there was no effective treatment, would die subsequently. In the 1800s, when X-rays were found accidentally, that became a therapeutic treatment for means the tumors which were exposed to X-rays showed a shrinkage, and that's how radiation came into the being. And after the Second World War, when people who had Hodgkin's disease were exposed to certain nitrogen muster, and they found that the tumors regressed, and that is how chemotherapy was born. And this is how there has been an evolution very slow in cancer treatment. But in last few decades, what you're seeing is like it's growing every year. You can see that there are new drugs coming in. There are hundreds of drugs in pipeline right now for cancer. And the entire system is changing. Basically, what is changing is the way we are thinking about treating cancer. Earlier, we used to think that only removing tumor or burning it off, or then subsequently came chemotherapy. But we are changing and understanding cancer better. So we are making our T cells fight for us. We are making the bystander effect. We are getting vaccines. We are getting targeted drugs. So huge change is happening in cancer treatment. And that is what I call evolution in cancer treatment.
So what are the major differences which you can see, sir, which was not 10 to 20 years ago, but is now today?
See, the biggest difference, what you see in last 10 years is the first time in 2016-17, when the American Cancer Society said there is a decline in cancer death. Cancer death has never declined in last so many decades. It's the first time they reported a 2.2% decrease in cancer death. Now that is the single largest 1-year decline. That happened due to several factors, like people getting aware about smoking and stopped smoking or reduced their smoking numbers. There were advances in diagnosis. The cancers were getting diagnosed better. There were cancers getting evaluated better. With next generation sequencing, we were be able to target lung cancers in a better way. And there were immunotherapies which came up in this last decade. Precision medicine, you need not treat everybody in the same way. You can look at the tumor, look at the type, and use a lock and key mechanism, not a hammer mechanism. Chemotherapy was a hammer mechanism. Everybody, you give chemotherapy and see who is responding. Now you don't do that. You take the tumor, you do a biopsy, then you send it for a next generation sequencing, or you look at a mutation. And then according to the mutation, you give the right drug to that patient. So you target the tumor. See, basically what happens is tumor cells have a DNA defect. We all know it is either genetic or acquired. This genetic defect or acquired defect is something which highlights cancer separate from the normal tissues or normal cells. And that is also giving them an ability to grow faster, maybe innovate into various areas. So if you understand the DNA change or the genetic change of a cancer, like if it is expressing EGFR, and if you give an EGFR targeted drug, you can block this protein and stop the cancer from growing or metastasizing. So this is what became an important thing. And also we had an artificial intelligence which came up, which also gave us an advantage. So we have an AI advantage, we have machine advantage, we have technology advantage. So many things happened in last couple of decades. And cancer treatment became more precise. So cancer treatment was no longer being given only as chemotherapy. The second important thing we understood was tumor microenvironment. We do understand that cancer has immune cells surrounding them. The T cells are going there. They're trying to fight it. But what happens is cancer cells are our own cells gone in wrong direction. The cancer cells are expressing PDL1 and the T cell has PD1. So whenever the T cell goes to fight this cancer, they do a crosstalk through PD-PDL1 and the T cell doesn't attack. So we can change or re-educate the bystander or stromal cells and make T cells block either the PD1 or PDL1 and make them fight. You can have a CTLA4 taking off the immune system brakes, and you can attack the tumor in many ways. Also, we learned that, if you do CAR T cell, or that is genetic re-engineering of the T cell, when the T cells are going to the tumor and not fighting, you can pick up these cells in leukemias and lymphomas and train them or do a genetic modification in them and put them back into the same patient. These re-engineered T cells, also called CAR T cell or chimeric antigen uh, uh, T cell, they can attack the tumor better. And patients who were not responding to anything started getting cured out of this. There was another drug called ipilimumab, which was there in 2011, which came up. And the person who got this drug was James Allison. Dr. James Allison got a Nobel Prize for this in 2018. And this ipilimumab was taking away the brakes of this immune system. The immune system which was not attacking, now you give a CTLA4 and you're making it active. You're just trying to get this, and it is now a combination of maybe nivolumab and ipilimumab, which is used in many cancers. And this is what is changing. The next approach, which is going to happen or which is happening. See, I'm trying to tell you what has happened in last 10 years. And I'm also trying to tell you what is going to happen in next 10 years. So the next 10 years, probably we are going to see a lot of viruses, which are going to mark these cancer cells and make them recognizable to the immune system, or we will have vaccines which will mark these cancer cells and make them, it will be like flagging them and allowing the immune system to get aware of these cells and attack them. Now, people have started to understand that obesity is one of the most important risk factor of cancer. 13 types of cancers are linked to it, and 6 of the cancers below 50, which are the fastest growing cancer, are linked to obesity. And this is what people have started to understand. And they have understood that, losing weight, which is unnecessary, and especially Asians, they are not like the Americans. I've been telling this even every time, that we don't have to go beyond 25 BMI. If we go beyond that, we are not like the Americans, that their BMI beyond 30 is called obesity. In Asians, beyond 25 is risky. So do not get this. And there was a survey by nutrition, there was a CPS2 nutrition survey, which said that if you're obese and have a colon cancer, then your risk to die is higher. 70% of the colon cancer comes from diet and obesity linked to diet. And if you are obese, you are going to die early of colon cancer. And also there was a study that, if you're a breast cancer patient, or if there is a risk of breast cancer, if they lose their weight before age of 50, then the risk of cancer drops. Or even if postmenopausal woman loses, they are reducing the risk of breast cancer. So anytime weight loss is good news. It is going to help you. Smoking being the most preventable cause of cancer, 1.9 billion people smoke across the world. So this is the most preventable thing. In COVID times, people were scared. They were not getting their smoking things and they wanted to quit it. So a lot of people tried. 70% of the population had no access how to give up smoking. Again, the fear of COVID is going down. So the smoking is going to go up. And that is the most significant cause of tobacco being 30% directly or indirectly linked to cancer by the smoking or chewing. In our country, smoking and chewing both are equally important. So these are important. Then we understood that microbiome, what is in our gut is bacteria, viruses, fungi. We have a billions of cells in our gut or bacteria, viruses, and fungi, which are helping us to digest, get our nutrition right, get our immune system right. Now, if you damage your microbiome, you are going to have less immunity, your metastasis is going to be more, your outcome is going to be poor. So your gut is very important. And that is what we have started to realize, that restructuring your gut microbiome. And that's the reason why everything in our Vedas and Krishna's uh, teachings, we always were told that you should eat curd. Even if you have to steal it, steal it. That was the meaning of dahi handi. So it is so important that you need to balance out your gut right and maybe eat your curd regularly and try to take these bacteria from, they used to take it from everybody. They used to take it from the neighbors, the bacteria which was used for making curd. And that was important because you're trying to reform your gut again and again with a good bacteria. So this healthy mix, and there were studies how the bacteria are migrating with the tumor cells. So fusiform bacterium, they found that it was migrating with the colon cancer metastasis. The next important thing which we have understood in last 10 years, it's not only the genes which you get from inheritance. The genes are important. 5% to 10% of cancers are linked to genetics. Now, everybody who is getting these genes is not going to get cancer. So if there are identical twins, there's only 20% concurrence of getting cancer. And there is a 80% lifestyle factor which plays important. The second part we have understood is that it is not the DNA or the script which is important. It is the director of the script which makes the movie good or bad. So you have epigenetics, which is making the movie good or bad. So it is genes. It may be a bad script, but you may have a good director, which may make the movie good. Or you may have a good genes, a good script, and your epigenetics may be bad, and it may make your movie worse. So it is not only what you get from your parent, it is also what you create is also important. The next important thing which happened, and it actually happened in last 20 years, targeted therapies. Now you have drug like imatinib, which was used for CML, which was see, there is a BCR ABL, which is a fusion happening in a cell, which is making this cell not to die. So this, normally we have a cell with, they have a apoptosis, which has a time, or telomerase, which tells them when to die. So when BCR-ABL joins, the cell ceases to die. It continues to become immortal. Now to make it mortal or to make it die, you require a drug like imatinib, which can go and cause a signal transduction and inhibition. So this is a targeted therapy which will work only at that point and make that cell switch off. And you will have these cells dying subsequently. So you had several such drugs which came up. So you have rituximab, trastuzumab, you have so many drugs which have come up, which are targeted drugs. But the next interesting thing which has happened in last 10 years is the basket trial. Earlier, we used to think that we treat only breast cancer like this. Now, their new concept is, now if you have an NTRK gene, then NTRK gene may be found in many cancers. So you don't target the cancer, you target the gene. So you give a drug called entrectinib, larotrectinib, which is targeting NTRK. So these are called basket trials. You started to target genetic abnormalities with a targeted drug attacking that particular genetic or protein which was affected in the cancer. So molecular diagnostics became better. You had next generation sequencing, you had liquid biopsies. You don't have to do a tumor biopsy all the time. You can do genetic analysis from a blood drop, and you can look at hundreds of genes in one go. Many things which have changed, and screening pattern changed. The screening pattern was earlier we were screening everybody. Now we have realized only target right patients with right screening methods. So you save on your cost and you target and screen them and try to get your cancer diagnosed much, much earlier. So this is what has happened, I would say, in last 10 years. And this is what has evolved. And a lot is evolving.
Yes, sir. You have very rightly highlighted one important aspect related to precision medicine. That is, medication has become very, very precise. So, what do you think? Is it benefit from oncologist point of view for the patients, the individualized or what we can say a customized pattern of treatment?
Precision medicine is like, the word itself tells you, being precise, being accurate.
Yeah.
When you hit something accurately, you don't require too much of energy. You require less energy. There is less. So it's like, when you put a hand grenade, you are destroying whatever comes underneath. But when you are using a cruise missile, you're targeting that right place, and hitting that right bunker and bursting it off. So that is one precision medicine method, but there are many more things happening to it. So earlier we were all excited when the war was happening, cruise missile. Everything was like cruise missile during the Gulf War. So now we have even better. We can, like there is a drug, trastuzumab. It can be attached to a drug called TDM1. So M1 moiety, which is a chemotherapy drug, amantacin, is attached to this drug. So whenever there's an HER2 expression, this cell which has got an HER2, the antibody will go and attack that. Once it attacks the tumor cell, it will open up that cell and the M1 moiety will go into that cell. So you don't have to give chemotherapy to the entire body. You just hit that cell. So this is what is the precision now of things. And you have so many drugs like this. You have drugs for CD20, you have drug for, so you have drug which is directly going into a CD20 lymphoma, which is rituximab was the drug, which was only a naked antibody. We call it naked antibody, means it is going and attacking only the tumor cell. Then you have got attached drugs. So you have got a conjugate. So you have an antibody, you attach a conjugate, and it goes to that cell and delivers the drug into that cell. So you can give chemotherapy along with a naked antibody. You can use it to highlight the tumor cell. Your immune systems can then attack it, or you can have many ways of doing it. You can add immunotherapy, you can add small molecules. So there are multiple ways of using this precision medicine. Even small molecules or large molecule, which are attacking the either the gene or the protein, are also precision medicine. So you may have an anti-angiogenic drug like bevacizumab, which is taking away the blood supply of a tumor. So that is also a precision medicine drug. So all these things are already happening, and we have seen patients. In fact, some of our patients on imatinib are surviving now 20 years plus since the time the first drug came in.
So, as per you now, what is that particular disease or cancer which has evolved the most in last 2 decades?
Every cancer has evolved, but there are like, few I can name. Like, you have lung cancer. You know that lung cancer is treated on a personalized basis. You have breast cancer, you have got prostate cancer, you have got colon cancer, you have got melanomas. Everything is personalized. You are looking at the perfect gene, the perfect breakup of that tumor. You are looking at it, and then you are attacking it with the right drug. So most of them are leukemias, lymphomas. Everything is now precision medicine. It's difficult to name one particular because the change is happening everywhere, and you're seeing everything is changing.
So what is your observation on immunotherapies and targeted therapies? Has this brought a paradigm shift in cancer treatment?
Yes, means in, as I said that, in last decade, immunotherapy has been the single most important transformation in cancer treatment, and it almost took 100 years. This
Absolutely.
idea was given in 1906 that we can treat cancer by immunology. But then we were not getting how to attack it. We were only going around it. We were not knowing it. So in 2010 onwards, you have so many drugs which have come up. You have PD-1 inhibitors, you have PDL-1 inhibitors, you have CTLA-4 inhibitors, you have small molecules. So everything has changed. And the cancer cells were dodging the body immune system. They were just going there. The PDL-1 used to get attached to the T cell, PD-1, PDL-1 talking to each other, the T cell not attacking the tumor. So they used to dodge it, and they used to attack the human body. So now we have understood that we can block this signaling and make our immune systems active to attack them. You have drugs, you have monoclonals, you have small molecules. You can use any of these things. You can even use chemotherapy. You can use anti-angiogenic drugs. So there are now 4 drugs combination. There are 2 drug combination. There are 2 antibodies combination, and attacking it in many ways. You have CAR T cell, as I said. You have 3 CAR T cells available. You have Chimera, which is Tisagen Lesuel. Then you have Axib, let me check the name, Axicabtagen, which is Esarcata, and you have Brexucabtagen Atulacel, which is Ticasatas. These drugs are not available in our country. They are pretty expensive right now. They are available in US. All these CAR T cells are attacking the tumor by taking patient's own T cell. So that's the reason they are so expensive, because you have to take out their T cell, you have to modify them in the lab and put them back to fight. And once the body understands to fight, it is a long lasting or a permanent solution to cure cancer. But because these treatments are expensive and cumbersome, they are not available in our country at present. But I'm sure with the kind of technology our industry has, this is all going to be possible in a near future. Maybe in 5 to 7 years, you will find this technology is being available in India, because we have one of the finest brains and we should be able to do this. There are also special things which have happened beyond immunotherapy, which are imaging techniques. So we have special MRIs which have come up, which is like you have a high-tech multi-parametric MRI, which looks at the prostate cancer and looks at the vascular jumble in that tumor. And you have a fluorescence lifetime imaging of breast cancer, trying to look at the proteins which are promoting the cancer. You're also using these imaging things to target cancers, like you can do a radio frequency ablation, you can do a cryo ablation, you can do laser techniques, you can mark them better, and you can do a better imaging leading to any better radiotherapy techniques. You have protons, so many things are happening. So it's not only immunotherapy, it is all other things. Like there is an abscopal effect. When you give immunotherapy and if you target one of the tumors, you release the antigen, the immunotherapy starts attacking the tumor better. So these are certain things which are happening. So it's nothing. See, you don't have to try and clap with one hand. Don't think that this is the only therapy and I'm going to use this only. So it's like clapping with one hand. You won't be able to do it better. But if you clap with both hands, it's like if you attack your enemy by army, by navy, by air force, you're going to attack it better. So don't think that this is the only therapy. You may have multiple ways of attacking the tumor, and everything is justified as long as your intention to make the patient better, to get the results right, and to knock off the tumor is there. So all these things are fine. But also remember one thing, when you're doing all these things and you're trying to do, don't think that only chemotherapy, immunotherapy, surgery, radiation, hormonal therapy, these are the only things. Also give importance to few things. Yoga, meditation. Yoga comes from India, so don't forget this. Yoga, meditation, You can have meditation, hypnosis, you can have self-suggestion, you can have acupuncture, you can have exercise as a part of it, you can have a right diet as a part of your treatment, you can have a motivation of a patient, participation of a patient, getting their symptoms down, making them involved in the treatment. All these things matter. So a lot of time I see patients or relatives telling, or don't try to tell this patient, he won't be able to take it. Now, who's going to fight for that patient? Patient has to fight himself. So if they are not ready, it's not possible. So no matter what good treatment you have, unless the patient is in the treatment or their own treatment involvement is not there in the treatment, patient involvement, without patient involvement, treatments are not going to work.
Wonderful advice, sir. Yes, you are absolutely right. One word which we are listening from last 1 year, vaccine. There is a concept, something called as cancer vaccines. What are their role in treatment? And are the Indian patients aware of it?
There are a lot of cancer vaccines which are available to us. 4 of them are already available in market. See, infection is responsible for 13 to 25% of cancers worldwide. In developing countries, it is like 25%. In African countries, 25% of cancers come from infection. There are certain infections which can be controlled and you can actually knock off the risk of cancer. One simple example is hepatitis. So if you just try and control hepatitis by vaccine, you can reduce the risk of hepatocellular carcinoma. Now, if you reduce down the risk of HPV, you can reduce down the risk of cervical cancer, anal cancer, head and neck cancer to a large extent. So there are cervical cancer vaccines available, which are to be given to younger females. You can also use it in males, and you can reduce down the risk of HPV, and this kind of viruses. But vaccines, these are called preventive vaccines. Okay, but there is something what you call therapeutic vaccines. Therapeutic vaccines are the ones when we use it after the cancer has happened. Now, the best example for this is like Sipuleucel, which is used in prostate cancer. So if somebody has got prostate cancer, you can give them vaccines after the cancer has happened. This drug can then go and act on the body and try to reverse down the process of cancer. But these treatments are pretty expensive. These therapeutic vaccines, because they're personalized, you have dendritic cell vaccines, you have this vaccine, so they're expensive. Right now, not available in this country. Dendritic cell we do have at our center, but this vaccine is not available. This is available in US with a trade name called Provenge, and it's costing 90,000 US dollars for 3 doses. So pretty expensive.
So one thing, sir, which you have spoke so much about evolution in cancer. One thing which we forgot is about evolution of doctor and patient relationship. It has also evolved. What is your view on that?
Yeah, I always believe that, if you are, if you have to treat somebody and you need to get a good result, you require that person to be involved in treatment, no matter what it is. See, if the patient is not involved in their own treatment, then they cannot get results. I would not treat a adult patient, even a child. I would try and explain them in their own language till whatever they understand, because it is their own internal fight which is happening. It is not I am doing for it or any oncologist is doing for them. It is the patient who is doing for it. And if you don't understand what is the question asked, how would you answer the thing, right? So first is try and understand your enemy or your cancer. If you have good knowledge, then you can fight it back. And if the team is not good, and the team is not only doctor and patient, it is doctor, patient, the junior doctors, the nurses, the ward people, the family, the friends, the society, everybody is a team. So you cannot ignore anybody's efforts. It's like, let me give an example. If somebody has got, we have nuclear families. If somebody has got cancer, the husband, wife, somebody may be busy with each other, trying to help the patient. One of them may be patient. The children may be very too small, getting food. or dropping to the hospital, some neighbor might be doing. So, or relative might be doing. So it becomes a part of your team. Somebody may be helping you in hospital. The counselor may be helping you. The junior doctors may be helping you to get your insurance done. Maybe the doctors are available to you on phone. So it's like a team. It's not like one person. So it's a relationship of this entire team, how it functions. And that is what matters in a result. A result is not that, when you treat a cancer, you need to be ahead of the problem. You don't have to chase a problem. Most of the time, we try to chase a problem. So when we chase a problem, we are always running behind. But if you anticipate a problem and you are ahead of the problem, you can reduce down a lot of them. And you can cut down what is not important, and you can give importance to what is really important.
So you have previously touched upon the overall survival. You spoke that the overall survival has improved with development of cancer treatment. But one thing which comes in mind is the quality of life in cancer patients, the drug toxicities. Whether the side effects has also improved with so much of progress in the cancer treatment.
Yeah, that's correct. Basically, see, the whole idea of personalization was that, earlier what we were doing was we were giving chemotherapy. We used to give a drug. It used to work for 60% of people. 20% of people had a lot of side effect. 20% had no effect. So you were giving a drug, then you were trying to look at who is responding, who is not responding, who is getting more toxicity, who is getting less toxicity. So this was the way of doing it. Now, when you do personalized treatment, means like if you are looking at a genetic makeup of a patient, you choose the right drug. If you are using a targeted drug and it is attacking the right protein or right gene, then it is attacking only those cells and not the normal cells. So your toxicity is less. Your neutropenia, your mucositis, everything is down. You may have a drug-related toxicity which may be very specific to that class of drug. Like, to give you an example, if you are using EGFR TKI, they give you rash or they give you loose motion, 2 or 3. So you know this, that there is going to be a rash or there are going to be 2 or 3 motions in a day. But this is something which is not going to bother a patient. But it is not going to be a gunshot treatment. It will not cause you neutropenias, admission into hospital, those kind of things which are life-threatening, which are not going to be there. So precision medicine has improved. Second, we have a lot of supportive care. We have growth factors, we have antibiotics, which will reduce down. Third, we have better understanding, we have better communications. So we have phones, and digital media, video calling. I don't use digital media, but my assistants do. And they do keep telling me, I've got a photograph like this, this is the rash, this is what is happening, and they communicate. So as I said, if your team is using any of these things, that also can communicate to patient very easily and reduce down the side effects. So it will help them to, if communication is faster, we are tackling the problems faster. So we're not allowing it to become big. And once the first cycle is over, most of the patients are expert by themselves. It is only the first 15 days which we have to really give them care. And once this is done, I think you don't have to really worry. The side effects are much less. With immunotherapy, the side effects are less. With targeted therapies, they are less. And with awareness. And this kind of awareness is also making people better skilled.
Yeah. And coming to awareness, I would request all the participants, if you have any questions, you can type it in the Q&A box, or you can type it in the Facebook comment box also. We will read it for you. So if you have any questions, you can type it. Next question, sir. It is related to cost of treatment of cancer. With so much of progress, has the cost increased or decreased? What is your view?
Cost is going to be always there. Whenever a new drug comes in, $1 billion minimum is gone into the drug development. So the companies do charge heavy charges to begin with. But that is true with everything in life. You get a new iPhone, you get it so expensive, but you still want it. So it's not that the other phones are not working, but you still want the best. So when you want the best and you want it first, you have to pay a price for it. But when it becomes common, the prices do drop. So every drug may be costing 1 lakh to begin with, may cost 4,000 after 5 years or 10 years. So the drugs cost, they keep fluctuating. So if any new technology comes up, before it becomes upscaled, or by multiple business people, business group, it is going to be expensive. Subsequently, it either a generic version comes down and that reduces the cost, or the company comes down on cost because the sales have increased or their requirement is gone up, or their upscaling of the product has happened. So this is going to happen, and I don't blame the companies for it, or I don't blame anything. This is a part and parcel. Who's going to take that risk of creating new drugs otherwise? How do you get that?
Very, very good. Uh, Evolution in cancer treatment, it looks promising. It looks very promising. But are there any disadvantage or drawbacks of such a rapid evolution?
Yes. See, basically what happens is you see a treatment in January, and
Yes.
in April you tell that this treatment is no longer the most effective. So patients who are taking treatment, they feel that, oh, I have been treated with this, and now you're treating somebody else with the other treatment. So this kind of things do happen because the changes are so rapid that the doctors also have to be aware and reading every day to keep updated. So if I don't look at a protocol for maybe a month, I may be outdated. I may be out of that because that this is what is happening. We see that the addendums are coming every month or every 15 days. There is something new happening in cancer, and that is what gets added into the guidelines. So the guidelines have to be updated. And sometimes when I am treating a patient, by the time I finish the treatment, the guidelines have changed. To give you an example, like when we started treating breast cancer a couple of years back, or when we started treating ovarian cancer a couple of years back, there were no guidelines like BRCA, olaparib, supportive was not there. So maintenance olaparib came in, and suddenly this became. So maintenance durvalumab came in for lung cancer, and that. So you're treating somebody. So when you explain them that this is what is going to be a treatment, like you're going to be on chemoradiation for a lung cancer, and suddenly after, by the time the patient finishes 6 weeks and another 6 weeks and 3 months, the guidelines are changed, and you have to tell the patient that you have to use a immunotherapy. So he says, why didn't you tell me to begin with? So it was not there. How do I tell you? And this is what happens. And then we are stuck explaining them. How do I explain them? Because the changes are too fast, and it is happening before the treatment is getting over. So this is a problem. But it is also an advantage. If somebody looks at it, supposing this came much later, then the patient could not have got this drug, which was a very interesting, which showed a change and doubling of cancer survival in lung cancer. So there are some good part to it. There are some bad part to it. So you have to always choose what you want.
Yes. So you roughly touched upon food and exercise at the start. So has the role of food and exercise also transformed with this cancer treatment transformation?
See, it is never less. It is, we have understood it less. We are all being made out of food. Okay. Whatever we eat, we become that. So this has been always, we keep hearing that, you eat something and after some time that becomes you. So we always know that whatever we eat, our thinking is like that, our body is like that. So that's the reason why in the Vedas you have this tamas, and this has been already known.
Yes.
We have misunderstood it. Okay, because we went the Western way. We never took the Indian way. And that's the reason why we lost the touch on this. Otherwise, to tell you today also, the Indian diet, if you follow Indian diet, the chances of cancer are extremely low. The prostate cancer risk is 25 times less than Americans with the Indian diet. The breast cancer risk is 10 times less than the Americans by Indian diet. So what we have lost, we have started to give up on our diet. We have started to choose their diet. We have lost on exercise, which was a part and parcel. We were all not very affluent people. So we had to work in the field. We were farmers, we were rural people, but now we have become urban. So we want everything by remote. We don't even have to get up out of our couch to change the TV knob. It's just buttons, and everything is by buttons. You order food, it's by buttons. Just press some buttons on your phone and you get food at home. You don't have to make it. So this is what is making more cancer, more than alcohol. Alcohol is 4%, sitting in one place is 5%. So I won't blame. See, people drink, that is not correct. I'm not promoting it. But I'm trying to tell you that not drinking alcohol is not good if you are sedentary. At least
We
those
are,
people know that they are drinking and they're doing something wrong. Here you are not even knowing what you are doing wrong. So you're not aware. So exercise is opposite of sedentary. So exercise is not walking. Run. Get your heart rate to 120, 130. So that is called moderate intensity exercise. If you do vigorous activity, then it is 150 to 170 heart rate. But I won't recommend vigorous activity if you're not having a trainer and if you're not being trained for it. Go for a moderate intensity exercise. Try and touch 120, 130. That's pretty safe. Climbing, cycling, jogging, Zumba, whatever you like, playing on ground can be the right thing. Eat right kind of food, get your weight down. Don't get your BMI up. BMI is very simple thing. Just download BMI calculator, put your height in centimeter, weight in kg, and you get a BMI. Get your BMI between 18 to 25. If you are eating late nights, avoid that. If you are eating too much of processed food, avoid that. If you are eating red meat, avoid that. Eating non-vegetarian food should be avoided. You should make your food maximum vegetables and fruits, chew them, eat it between 9 and 7 p.m. Try to keep 40 minutes of exercise, drink a lot of water. You can have green tea, you can have whatever you like, but taking buttermilk, which contains kefir, which has got a good effect on your microbiome, which has also got an anti-cancer effect. Eat fruits naturally. They have a lot of phytonutrients. Eat vegetables raw wherever possible. So you get a lot of phytonutrients. There are 25,000 phytochemical phytonutrients available to us from nature. We are not using it. We want processed food. We want processed tinned fruit. Food. We want tinned fruits. We want tinned proteins. So nothing natural. We are making everything we want supplements. Now supplements should not be used. If you use supplements, you are actually promoting sometimes cancer. And there have been studies which have told that if you take antioxidants, you may promote cancer. So this kind of thing should be avoided.
what about green tea, sir?
Green tea, there are mixed results, but it's not bad. You can have green tea. And preferably, I would say that, naturally, we used to have tulsi, lemongrass. These things are fine. Yeah, absolutely fine.
So basically, we have to make. Sorry to interrupt. Please continue, sir.
Go ahead.
So basically, we have to make small changes for big difference. Yes?
Correct. You don't require to do anything extraordinary. See, if you don't have to go to gym to become fit, if you have a staircase and if it is 1 floor, 2 floor, just climb it 20 times. 30 floors a day can make you fit. You don't have to really go to a gym. Only thing, remember, while climbing down, don't jump and climb down. Okay? Just be very careful while climbing down, otherwise you'll damage your knees. That's it. When you climb up, there is no problem. It is climbing down which is to be taken little carefully. And you don't have to be. You can do cycling. You can do a intermittent exercise, like, you can run 20 steps. You can walk 20 steps. So that also will improve your heart rate.
So last two questions we will take, sir. Any one key area which you think that still need to be worked upon in terms of this cancer treatment, this evolution?
See, the first key area I would say is, because cancer is a lifestyle thing, awareness is the first area where we should work. See, it is not that you get a cancer and try to develop a better drug. It is the area where you work that don't allow the cancer to happen. By not allowing cancer to happen is the best way. And that is where we should work. And that's the reason I'm trying to get this into the media so much, that don't, because 90% of cancer is preventable. And if you avoid cancer, you are not only helping yourself by becoming fit. You are reducing a lot of lifestyle diseases. So your diabetes, your hypertension, your cardiac, your cancers, all these things are linked to one thing, and that is your body fat, which is an inflammatory situation. So this is called obesity is an inflammation. So it releases a lot of substances, cytokines, which are causing all these problems. So that is one thing. Key area needs to be focused on. The second key area we need to focus on is our own production of these immunotherapies and the targeted precision medicine, CAR T cells, and other things, because they are too expensive. Otherwise, we will be draining all the economy out of this country into somebody else's pocket. So we need to work on this. And if we can get these things done in our country, first is reduce down the cancer. Second, improvise on our capabilities.
So you have given last question answer also. So thank you for such a wonderful session. And any particular message which you want to give to our viewers?
See, I would like to tell you that screening regularly. If you are, there are some screening protocols. We won't discuss it right now, but if you are 40 plus and above, if you have family history, if you are a smoker, if you have any bad lifestyle, if you're obese, and if you think that you have some symptoms where you are not settling down in last 15 days, make sure that you have visited the right doctor, make sure that you have screened yourself to make sure that you are not having any illness. Don't allow an illness to happen and then treat. So keep screening yourself on timely basis, maybe 6 monthly, 1 yearly, 2 yearly, whatever suits your needs, depending upon what your doctor tells you and how you need to be evaluated. What needs to be done? They are pretty simple things. They are not very expensive. And if you do these things, you can make a change. Second, look at what you are eating. If you are eating, whenever possible, try and go for an organic food. Try to avoid pesticides. Exercise regularly, eat regularly, greens, fruits, and chew them. Don't gulp them. Try to avoid fast food. When you are eating food, avoid watching TVs and YouTubes and any of these things. Don't do that. You just concentrate on your food, put yourself into it, and because you're going to become what you're going to eat, and whatever are your vibrations around, if you're if you're looking at a scene which is fight or a murder and you're eating, so what are you creating yourself with? So I think it's what we sow, we reap. And that's the reason why I say change your lifestyle. And you can change your thought, change your lifestyle, and change yourself. And change the nation, finally.
Very rightly said. It's a very wonderful message given by you. Thank you, Manish sir, for this wonderful initiative of Cancer Talk. And we hope that you keep creating awareness among patients through such talks again and again. And thank you for all the viewers also for being with us. Please do visit sir both channel on YouTube, Cancer Talk with Dr. Manish Jain, which is on YouTube channel. And for Spotify, you can visit Cancer Ki Baat Dr. Manish Jain ke saath. So till next time we meet, on behalf of entire team, goodbye and take care. Thank you.